Welcome, welcome to Sisterhood Check-In. I am your author and coach, Nadira Lewis, and it is Friday. Woo! I am excited to be able to have you here with me here on Sisterhood Check-In. Give me one moment while I make sure that everybody can hear. If you're able to hear me, just put a 1 in the chat and let me know that you hear me while I try to go ahead and make sure that everybody that I'm live on all of the platform. So bear with me one moment. I hope everybody's doing well today. Put it in the comments and let me know if this is your first time watching me here on Sisterhood Check-In and where you're watching from. I would love to be able to hear from you. In the meantime, if you are a faithful watcher here at Sisterhood Check-In, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you can be notified every time I upload a video. If you are watching me on Facebook, or if you're watching me on Instagram, or if you're watching me on TikTok, make sure you click like and share if you are blessed by the contents that you are hearing this far. So give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and get everybody on. Hold on. Let me just make sure everybody can hear. So bear with me one moment. Just going to go ahead and make sure that everybody can hear me. And make sure that everybody can. So just bear with me one moment. I hope everybody had a blessed week this far. This week has been really amazing. I had had a lot of rest and was able to kind of just, regroup. And, sometimes we need those moments to regroup. We need those moments to kind of get our thoughts together. So I'm really excited that everything that I've been able to get some rest. So thank you for all of those that are faithful and continue to watch me. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate you being here with me. I'm just trying to had a busy week, so it's taking me a little bit of time to get things situated and together. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video, but before I do, make sure you call up your girlfriends and tell them Sisterhood Check-In is on the air, and I will be right back after this. Thank you for watching.
Sometimes it's not enough to be reminded that Jesus hasn't left you or forgotten you. We need to declare it over ourselves, over others. No matter the season you may find yourself in, no matter the depths of darkness you're wading through, you can join him in declaring the truth that God is light upon your feet, whether or not you can see the next step, that God is your strength, even though the weight of life seems to be crushing you down. And that when your job, your marriage, your relationship, your health feels like it's coming to a dead end, there is only one God that can make dead things live again. These are his promises, and they're the only thing you need to declare over your life. So as you step into this next season or this next moment, you can declare that God's not done with you. He's just getting started. You can declare that the good work that he has started in you, he will surely complete it. You can declare that the same God that parted the seas goes before you, goes behind you. You can declare these promises over your life, over your family's life, over the people passing on the street. You can declare these truths over every circumstance, over every season of your life. You can declare that every day belongs to him and every new breath belongs to him. Because we have the power of a living God living inside of us. And this is our declaration.
Woo! I don't know about you guys, but I tell you, let me just make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay, there you go. I had to turn this up to make sure that the volume was on and make sure you guys can hear me. I am so excited. Every time I hear that, it just stirs up something on the inside of me. And I get like super duper excited. Welcome back to Sisterhood Check In. I am excited. I'm Nadira, your author and mindset coach. And I'm excited that you are joining me here on Sisterhood Check In today. I cannot wait to get into today's topic to talk to you about the nice girl syndrome. Come on, say it with me again. Nice girl syndrome. We're going to talk today and we're going to get into, and it's not going to be something that you think, you might be thinking, oh, I know what that's about. I know what she's going to talk about. I'm telling you, I have had some eye opener revelation when it comes to the nice girl syndrome, and I wanted to kind of talk about the hidden deception. There is a hidden deception behind being nice, right? And the hidden deception, we're going to go into. Hold on, let me type this in here for those of you that are watching that may want to know when I what did that come in. You all might be coming in at different times, and I want you to be able to get a grasp on what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be talking about nice girl syndrome and what that actually means. It's the deception behind being nice, and there is so much talk about, especially in this day and time. You got the soft girl era where you have people that are talking about how to be in your soft girl era. And then you have a group of women over here that are the no nonsense women, and they're not taking any crap. And this is what it is. And I ain't finna deal with Jack the Ripper and everything else. And then you have the woman in between. The woman in between is that woman that struggles because she wants to operate in her soft girl era, right? She wants to operate as a soft girl, but at the same time struggling with experiences that she had as a nice girl that puts her in a position to be a no nonsense girl. And it can be really tough. So bear with me one moment, y'all. I got to go ahead and make sure that my Instagram people that are watching me can also be able to hear what I have to say. And so what happens is when you're dealing with the nice girl syndrome, you kind of get portrayed as somebody that's easily taken advantage of, right? You get portrayed to a person that is a predator, or a person that operates, you become attracted to the narcissistic spirit, the people that are narcissistic. And these people thrive on your weakness, right, of being narcissistic. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna just add this in here so I can stream. I thought I actually put this in here, but I didn't. So bear with me one moment, and we're gonna get into what this actually means, the nice girl syndrome. We're gonna get into this. And I don't want anybody to miss what I'm gonna say regarding this. So bear with me one moment while I just add this in here. Let me just put this in here so that everybody can get a chance to hear what I say in regards to the nice girl syndrome. Okay, I think we are good to go now. I think we are good. I think we are good. I think we are good. Let me just make sure, just correct one other thing. And if you guys let me know in the chat if you can hear me. That would help me out so much so that I don't get caught up into talking and then realize that I'm talking to myself, talking to the trees, because nobody's able to hear me. But I want to talk about what this nice girl syndrome actually means. So I'm going to explain to you. I'm going to read this to you. Just bear with me one moment. What is considered a nice girl? All right, I'm going to talk to you what a nice girl actually is. When you think about what a nice girl is the Bible talks about a nice girl being a silly woman, right? And the reason why I correlate with the both of them, a nice girl being a silly woman, is because most women think that being nice is the goal, when the goal is to be kind, right? The goal is to operate in the fruit of kindness, right? Kindness is the fruit of the spirit. Niceness, let me tell you what niceness is. Niceness is operating from a standpoint of it's kind of like on the borderline of being what the Bible calls a silly woman, right? And a silly woman is referencing women who might display characteristics seen as superficial, naive, misguided, and it's women who it can be also looked at as women who actually lack discernment or easily to be swayed, right? However, it's important to look at these traits and the reason why I say there's a correlation, because when you think about what the word nice really is, right? It kind of makes it seem like, well, I'm a nice girl. I'm being kind, but being kind is not the same as being nice, because I was listening to somebody and they was given an explanation of what a kind or a nice person really is. And I'm going to tell you what's the definition of a nice person. A nice person is what most people would consider as somebody who shows kindness, right? And has empathy and respect, right? But niceness kind of moves along the border of somebody of people pleasing, right? So a person that most people would be considered nice really struggles with balancing being kind and being firm, right? And so when I was doing this study and I was thinking about it, and I was like, wow. And I began to read, and I begin to, and because I'm a Christian, of course, I'm going to refer it back to the Bible. I'm going to look at what the Bible says about what I'm thinking about. So I'm sorry for those that have a problem with that, but this is how I feel, and it's my broadcast, right? So a nice person is generally defined as someone who is pleasant, friendly, and considerate, right? Towards other people, right? That is generally what most people think a kind person is, right? But when you think about what a kind person is, I'm sorry that I keep getting phone calls in between this. Getting them phone calls. So what we're going to talk about is character traits of a nice girl, right? And I'm driving this to somewhere because I want to show the difference or the correlation between between a nice girl and a silly girl, right? So let's look at a few things, right? Before we get into that, right? Let me pull this up. Hold on one second. So when I look at the definition of a silly woman, it's aka nice girl. It's often referred to someone who is seen, right? So now I've read you the definition of what some people see it as, right? Some people see it as a person who's pleasant, right? But these are actually characteristics that are of a kind person, right? Nice people are all of those first things that I talked about. They're pleasant. They're always preferring people before them, always preferring one another, always thinking about the consideration of others. But there's an undertone to what is portrayed in the eyes of people that take advantage of nice girls, or what I consider a nice girl syndrome. And in those eyes, you are betrayed. You are seen or referred to as someone that is foolish, gullible, easily misled, right? And when you're looked at in the eyes of the perpetrator that looks at you as being nice or operating in the nice girl syndrome, then what happens is there's several things that happen to you. And number one, you start to lack discernment and wisdom, right? And when you lack discernment and wisdom, to them, this is how you're portrayed. You don't even know that I'm taking advantage of you. You're looked at as a person that is foolish, you're gullible, and it's easy to tell you anything. You'll believe anything that you say because you are nice, right? And because you're gullible, this is how they look at it. You're gullible. I could just do whatever I want. She ain't gonna know the difference. So their perception is that you lack discernment and wisdom, right? And Proverbs is filled with advice encouraging wisdom and understanding, particularly in the area of being gullible, right? And we're going to look into that in Proverbs. Let me pull this up. Proverbs, I believe it's 14, chapter 1. Hold on, and my screen is moving extremely slow, so forgive me if it seems like my screen is taking forever. But in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 1, it says a wise woman, right? It talks about character traits of a wise woman, right? A wise woman builds her house, right? But with her hands, the foolish one tears it down. Here, wisdom is tied to discernment and a firm foundation, while foolishness or silliness is associated with carelessness and lack of insight. So, when you're unable to discern, right, that you're by the things that you're doing, right? If people start to look at you as having a lack of wisdom and discernment, they're going to treat you a certain way, right? They're going to act a certain way towards you because they're going to look at it as, oh, she don't know what's going on. She don't know, she don't know nothing anyway. Because to you, they look at they look at it as you're the nice girl, right? And because you're the nice girl, right, you lack discernment and wisdom. So to them, it's an open door to mistreat you or to take advantage of you, right? Because they feel like because you operate in what the characteristics of a nice girl is considered, you're very pleasant, preferring everyone else's needs above your own. And it positions you, right, to be in a place for people to take advantage of you, right? For people to look at, as you ever hear people say, take my kindness as weakness. Well, really, it's not that they're taking your kindness as weakness. What's happening is they're looking at you as you're the girl with the nice girl syndrome. So because they consider you a nice girl, because kindness is different. Kindness means you see people the way God sees them, right? You operate from a perspective that you give them respect, you treat them with respect, right? But you understand, but you have boundaries. And so you no longer allow or give the impression by your actions and your responses and how you show up that I'm not giving you permission to take advantage of me. And and because I'm not giving you permission to take advantage of me, it's vocalized. And not only is it vocalized, it's you start to stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm not going to let you. And that doesn't necessarily mean you got to come up in the most extreme circumstances. In some, which is, like I said, you have one extreme to the next. You have one person, you have the nice girls that are pleasant. And then you have sometimes those girls that are pleasant, they turn over to the opposite side of the meter and they become no nonsense women, right? Which means if they feel like they have showed too much, if they have become nice to you or become overly nice to you, they start to feel like you've taken advantage of them. And because you've taken advantage of them, they become the no nonsense girl. Right. So now they're frustrated and they begin to look at it as, I'm tired of being nice. And you should be, because the goal is to be kind, not to be nice, because niceness has an undertone of where it's imbalance. Right. And we're going to get more into it. Let me go ahead and continue to read this to you so you can get exactly what I'm saying. So niceness, or what the Bible calls as foolish women, is associated with carelessness and lack of insight, right? When you have lack of insight, you give people the benefit of the doubt that don't deserve it. When you lack insight, right? When you lack insight, what happens is you tend to overlook things, red flags that are very evident. You begin to look at it and say, oh, the flag is not really red, it's actually pink. Right? You begin to look at things and begin to paint your own picture, right? You begin to overlook the obvious things, right? Because you lack insight, right? Next thing is influence and vulnerability. Second Timothy 2, verses 6 to 7 discusses how certain individuals can lead gullible women astray, right? And let's read it. Let's go in here. Let me pull it up and let's go over it. Let's read it. Second Timothy chapter 3, verses 6 through 7. Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou, oh, wait, hold on. That's not it. Hold on. Second Timothy chapter 3. I'm in the wrong chapter. Hold on. Second Timothy chapter 3, verses 6 through 7. And it says, for of this sort, right? But before that, I want to read the scripture. I want to read it from the beginning because I think this is relevant to even going into that scripture. But in verse 1, it says, this know also that in the last days, perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, heavy-minded, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort, what sort? These people that are described, that I just described, right? They lead captive silly women. They creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, and laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. And so when you begin to operate in this silly girl syndrome, what happens is you begin to have, especially as a Christian, and I'm talking specifically as a Christian, right? Because when you're out in the world and you're acting silly, there's so many other things tied to that, right? But I'm specifically talking to those that walk with God. When you operate as a silly woman, right, you begin to operate in a form of godliness, which means you lack discernment, right? You lack discernment and you lack wisdom. So you begin to give people the benefit of the doubt in areas where you should have been clear in your discernment to be able to see that there's something wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being able to love your neighbor as yourself, right? And demonstrating the love of God. But I think sometimes in our ability to describe or discern the love of God, we forget that God is love, but God's version of love is not just a big old bear hug, right? God's version of love is not just you just go around giving everybody a hug and a kiss. When you truly love, you love the truth, right? So that means that whenever God begins to deal with you pertaining to a certain area of your life, it is his area of showing love. When you correct your children, right? You correct your children because you love them. You don't correct your children because you hate them and you just want to whoop them or reprimand them. You correct them because you love them. So it is not you operate in a false sense of love and humility by operating in this nice girl syndrome, because you are not able to discern, right, that what's before you. You're not able to discern what's before you. So you treat the things that are before you that are clearly there to deceive you or to take advantage of you. You treat it as if it's as if it's not there, right? And you begin to operate in a form of godliness, thinking that what you're doing or how you're behaving is God-like, when it's really lack of discernment. So then it says, number 3. So number 1, when we lack discernment and wisdom, right, then that means we're not able to see things as they are, right? We begin to look at things through a superficial eye, right? We don't see things as they are. Also, we lack influence in our ability, and what happens is our influence and our vulnerability, right, makes us prone. We become like sheep in the midst of wolves, right? you become prey to people that are who operate in a narcissistic personality trait, right? Or disorder, whatever, however you want to list it. Because when you operate in a nice girl syndrome, you overlook and you don't have wisdom and you don't have discernment, then what happens is you become prey to people that are narcissistic. You become prey to people who look to take advantage of you because they look for areas of weakness in your character. They look for areas of weakness, right? In your speech, right? And you have to be really careful. And it's funny because as I was thinking about this, there's so many things that I've learned in the last couple of months that God was just really just like showing me about my own personal life, right? And the key goal was is not that you walk around and you have to be mean, because you don't want to be the extreme, right? You don't want to be on the other side of the fence where you're walking around in the fence and you're walking around mad at the world. But you got to be able to ask God, and when He show you, you got to be able to look at what He shows you and be able to see it for what it really is. You got to be able to see it for what it is and be able to do or make the necessary adjustments, right? So, number 3, gentleness and strength. The Bible speaks highly of kindness, compassion, and gentleness. And these qualities are also associated with being a nice girl. So most of the time, our version of gentleness and strength, we think that if we are nice, it's contributed to being gentle, right? And being a woman of strength. If I'm nice, right? I'm being meek, right? No, you're not. And I'm going to tell you why, right? When it comes to when it comes to being gentle or strength as being perceived as being a nice girl, the Bible talks about speaks of kindness, compassion, and gentleness, right? These are qualities that can be associated, right, with being kind, right? When you are compassionate and you're gentle. But here's where the problem is, right? In 1 Peter 3:4, women are encouraged to have a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight, right? So we associate being nice as being gentle and quiet, right? However, this doesn't imply weakness, but rather a balanced character that includes an inner strength, self-control, and reliance on God's wisdom, right? And when you are relying on God's wisdom, that means when He shows you something and He begins to say, you know, this, and He begins to show you certain things and you begin to overlook it or begin to say, oh, well, you begin to sugarcoat it or you begin to paint a different picture, right? You put yourself in a position to be gullible because you don't see, you lack discernment. You lack discernment. You lack the ability to see things as they are. That's really when you think about when He tells us to walk in the Spirit, right? Walking in the Spirit means you're seeing things from the eyes of God. You're seeing things from His perspective, right? And when you see things, there's a lot of things that when Jesus walked with Peter, and Peter, Jesus said, I didn't come to bring, I didn't come to bring peace. That don't mean that doesn't mean He walked around causing trouble and doing different things. It was just His ability to be able to walk in the boldness of who He was, in the truth of who He was, caused chaos. And sometimes when you begin to grow in the areas of your spiritual life, what happens is you begin to see things as they are, and you have to get to the point where you walk like He did, and you begin to call things as they are, so that not only you can be free, but the people around you can also experience freedom also, right? Number 4, being salt and light. So another perspective, what nice girls is looked at is being salt and light, right? But the Bible tells us in Matthew 5, right, chapter 13, verses Matthew chapter 5, 13-16, Jesus calls believers to be the salt of the earth, right, which is the light of the world. And this encourages us to stand firm in our faith and influence the world positively. Well, if you are operating in that nice girl syndrome, it's hard. That means you don't have the ability to stand firm in what you believe. So that means because you lack the ability to discern and to stand firm in what you believe, you kind of just go with the flow, which means you just everything is okay. You have no boundaries. And because you have no boundaries, and that's what happens when you begin to stand for what God, when you begin to stand alongside of God and you begin to agree with God, then what happens is you begin to stand firm in certain areas of your life, and it can be portrayed, right? You're being salt and light. When you think about salt, salt is, if you when you salt is a preserver, right? Light shines, right? Which means even the Bible say you can't put a light under a bushel, right? The light is meant to shine. So when you walk in light and you begin to operate as salt, right? Then that means it causes things to it causes the when you think about when you put salt on your food, it not only preserves and gives it a better taste, but it actually it preserves your food, right? So if we're going to operate as women of wisdom and not necessarily a silly woman, then that means that we have to have influence, and we have to be vulnerable. And being vulnerable and influence is not just about just saying, it's about being able to be gentle, right? And having kindness, being kind and compassionate, right? These are qualities that are associated with a nice girl if you just look at a person's gentleness and strength. Oh, she's so nice, she's so this. And when you ask most of the people what do they consider about that person as nice, it's always going to be tied to what the first thing I said, right? It's going to be always tied to her ability to have lack of discernment, which means they're going to be looking at her and thinking that she's gullible, right? She's gullible. So when most people say, oh, she's gentle or she's kind, it's what they're really saying is she's gullible. And some people are bold enough to have conversations and say, yeah, she's gullible, she's stupid, and then there's some people that can look at you and say, okay, she just lacks discernment, and be able to pray for that woman that's operating in the lack of discernment, right? So number 5, talked about number 4, being the salt in the light, right? Number 5, boldness and grace. When you are able to operate, Proverbs 31 provides an example of women, right, who embodied both strength and kindness. This is what's known in the Proverbs 31 woman. It says that she was wise, she was industrious, she was kind, and she was strong, right? She feared the Lord, which was the foundation of her wisdom and strength, and allowing her to care for others without compromising her own principles and values. And so when you look at this nice girl syndrome, these are women who operate from their emotions, right? And operate from their heart, right? So they no longer, they're not operating from a level of discernment. So what happens is you become gullible, right? And so when people see you doing things and you beginning to care, you're beginning to spend so much time and that's why I really hate, this whole idea of selflessness being taught in such an unbalanced way, because what happens is how can you love your neighbor as you love yourself when you don't even show love and compassion to yourself? And you can't show love and compassion to yourself unless you do the first part of that scripture that we talk about, which is to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your strength. When you're able to do that, then you're able to see yourself the way God sees you, and you can love your neighbor as yourself. But there's so much emphasis on love your neighbor as yourself when you don't even love yourself, because you have not submitted yourself to God fully so that he can show you who he is and give you a balanced way of loving other people. But what happens is when there's so much emphasis on other people, then what happens is you lack boundaries. And what happens is people come in, right? They take advantage of you because of the nice girl syndrome, because you fail to lack boundaries. You fail to put up boundaries, which are not only there to protect the people from outside coming in, but it's also meant to protect you, which is why God said, guard your heart with all diligence. Why? Because out of it flows the issues of life. And when you have an unbalanced way of how you deal with things around you, what happens is it positions you in a place to be taken for granted, to be taken advantage of, right? But when you begin to set boundaries, I had talked about, I think it was like earlier this year when I was talking about the different types of gates and how you have a white picket fence, right? Which a white picket fence is there, to kind of keep people from allowing their pets to poop, like dogs to poop in your yard, right? So you might have a white picket fence, right, around your house. And it's not necessarily that particular boundary is not necessarily there to protect you from anybody breaking into your house, because you can step over the white picket fence if somebody wanted to really get in your house. But what the white picket fence does is set up a boundary to say, this area that I have fenced in, I don't want people walking or violating my boundary, right? To allow your pet to, or allow you to throw trash in my yard, or I might be growing flowers, right? I don't want you to go in and pull up or pluck up my flowers, right? I don't this white picket fence is here, so because I don't want your dog pooping in my yard, right? But then you might have a fence that is more of the wooden fence that's a little bit higher, right? You might have a little bit higher wooden fence, up what they consider a privacy fence, right? And that fence, that boundary, right, could be to prevent people from seeing what's in your yard, right? You set up a boundary to prevent people from seeing what you might have that is considered valuable, right? And if it was being seen, somebody might have be tempted to break into your house, or maybe tempted to take something that doesn't belong to them. So you put up a privacy fence, right, which could be wooden, right, and 9 times out of 10 is 5 or 6 feet tall. That privacy fence is to keep people from. It is to protect you, right, from being able to enjoy your property without being invaded, right, by either people that are soliciting, right? You're putting up a boundary. So if we could put up a boundary in the natural when it comes to certain things, you have to have that same mindset when it comes to your heart, right? And then you have the privacy fence. We talked about the white picket fence. And then you have the fence that requires you to type in the code, right? And which means you don't get access unless you are given that code. If you are not given that code, you don't have the right to access my property unless you enter that code. And if you decide, right, you can easily push through the white fence. And there's even a possibility you can even break open the privacy fence, right? But when you have a fence that requires an access code, it requires you giving access. And I have to give you that code to give you access. And it's the same thing. There are people that may have, if you put up just a white picket fence, there may be some people that may say, oh, I can't, they may have a certain level of respect for you, right? Which means they may say, oh, I can't really curse in front of her, right? Or I don't want to curse in front of her because I have, because she's so nice, right? She has a certain level of respect for herself. So I may not curse in front of her, right? But then you have some women, right, where they put up a privacy fence. They won't even have a conversation with you if they feel like you show up and you're disrespectful, right, in how you approach them, right? They have that privacy fence, right? And then you have those who have an access code, which means you don't get access to me unless I give you a code to come in. And if I give you a code to enter into my property, right? Listen to where I'm going. Then that means I am taking full responsibility, right? To where if you come in and it doesn't mean that you still can't stand your ground, but I'm giving you access to a very vulnerable part of my life. Because if I put a fence that requires a code, that means I'm making it clear, right, that I'm giving you access, which means there's a certain level of trust, right? And when you think about the silly girl syndrome, right, what happens is you start giving out codes. and access to all kinds of people, right? And you don't do the vetting process. You don't go through the process of finding out who they really are outside of being with you. What are they like when they're around other people beside you? What are they like when they're around their family? But what happens is you start giving access codes to people, right? Which is what was happening in back in when Paul was telling when they were talking about the silly women, right? Going into silly women's houses, laden with sins. These women were burdened with sins and taken captive, right? Meaning that they were being taken advantage of, right? Through doctrines and who knows what else, right? And so what happens is when you allow anybody access just because they say one or two things that tickle your ear, because you remember, women, we receive by what we hear. We fall for what we hear, right? Men are more driven by what they see. We are driven by what we hear. Men are driven by what they see. Women are driven by what they hear. That's why when you tell a woman, I love you, I love you, and you have not begun to be able to discern, you'll take those words, right? And you'll begin to operate and put up a picket fence. When there's some people, you need to put up a whole privacy. You need to put more than a privacy fence. You need to put up a access code. You need to have a guard at the door, so that where you not only they don't have an access code, but you have somebody that has to vet that it is okay for this person. I remember I was doing something. I don't know. I think I was in I want to say I was in Dunwoody or whatever. So I was dropping something off at this house when I was doing Amazon, and I was dropping out at this house, and it scared the living bejeebies out of me, right? Because when I pulled up on the house, right, here I am, I step up to the gate, and this man pops up, and he's like camouflage. He's like in camouflage, and he flashes the light in my face, and he says, "Who are you?" I mean, not that it was a get dead giveaway that I had on an Amazon jacket. I mean, it's hard to kind of not see the big old arrow that's on your jacket, right? But he flashed the light at me, and he said, "Who are you?" And I told him who I was, and he was standing there, and he was on his guard, right? And even though it was kind of like scary and funny at the same time, it began to paint a picture for me of what it's like, what it means when God says to guard your heart with diligence, right? Meaning it showed me what it's like to guard something, right? That means you have to be intentional. You have to put in the work, right? To be diligent, right? Which means you just can't just say, you got to be diligent. You got to be on your grind, right? And so he said, give me the package, just like that. So I gave him the package, and he was like, "You can go." And the fence was so high that I couldn't even see. So I said, apparently, I don't know if this was a celebrity's place or whatever. Somebody important lived there, or somebody there had some really high boundaries, right? That they had somebody that was there. And then the second thought came to my mind is he might be halfway crazy. That's the first thing I thought, is he might be halfway crazy, and he could be somebody, he could be, hiding the fact that you around here and look like a regular neighborhood, and you around here with a camouflage suit on, and you mixing in with the trees, made me think that could he be there maybe trying to break in, or, could he be trying to spy on maybe his wife or something like that, or somebody that he wanted to get? Because I felt like, well, dang, if you protecting somebody who lives in appear to be a normal neighborhood, and you protecting them like that, it either had to be somebody who was either of a high caliber, could have been a celebrity, or it could have been that something else was going on. But it gave me a visual of what it's like when God says to guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it flows the issues of life. And when you operate as a silly woman, a woman that lacks discernment, right? Then what happens is it's easy for people to take advantage of you and you not see it, because you are thinking that you're being kind when really what you're doing is you're operating under a false pretense of not wanting to operate, right, in the truth of who you are, because you're doing it with the ability of you're thinking you're going to get something in exchange. So your niceness is, you're doing it for the sake of thinking this is how I'm going to gain this person, whether it's a friendship or relationship. So what happens is you begin to operate under a false pretense of kindness, a false pretense of compassion, a false pretense of gentleness, because you're doing it with the mindset of what you feel, what you expect to get back in return. Being a kind woman means it's just a part of who you are. It's a fruit of the spirit. So that means anything you do, you're not expecting anything in return. I'm not expecting you to, if you decide that you don't want to reciprocate, then I know, right? If you don't reciprocate the love that I desire, or the love that I feel like I deserve, then being a kind woman is being able to understand that I know my worth and I know what I deserve, and I can walk away, right, and be okay, and not be a woman that's, that not be contemptuous, not be all angry and bitter. I can walk away knowing that if you're not able to reciprocate on the level that I feel like I deserve, or that I'm reciprocating back, I have enough respect, right, for myself, even though I consider, that no matter what type of personality trait you have, I have to look at the fact that me being kind should not make me gullible, right? And so let's go on to the next one. Was that all? Okay. So I guess that was it. So, there you go. So the Bible encourages us to balance gentleness and joyfulness, right? But he expects us to do it with discernment, strength, and wisdom. And this balance allows us to be gracious and kind without being naive. So when you think about a nice girl, I want you to think about a girl that's naive. And when you think about somebody that's naive, that means they lack discernment. They lack the ability to see things as they are, right? The balance allows us to be gracious, to be kind without being silly or naive, being rooted in truth while being compassionate and approachable. So when you are kind, right, you are rooted. There's a difference. When you are compassionate and kind, you are rooted in truth, which means you are aware. You're not operating you're not being naive. You're being rooted. You are rooted in truth, right? You are compassionate and approachable. So that means you're not allowing yourself to be put in a position to be taken for granted, right? You're not allowing yourself to be, for your kindness to be taken for weakness, which means that God said he already sent us as sheep in the midst of wolves, but he doesn't tell us to allow people to walk all over you, right? Or to mistreat you to the point that you mistreat yourself. It means being able, and it doesn't mean that you get to control people and what they do and what they say. It means that you understand, right? You understand that whatever spirit that person is operating in, they're operating in that spirit, and you're not going to allow that spirit to influence, right, who you are, and influence you showing up and being compassionate, right? And being associated with being a woman that woman of discernment, right? Versus somebody that's looked at as, oh, I could just take advantage of her. So when people come in your life, you begin to look at it. How do I deal with this person? What kind of boundaries do I set around people if I know that I have a kind heart, right? And I know it's easy, because when you are walking with the Lord, it's easy to be like, kindness is just a part of the fruit of the spirit. So it's easy to be kind to people when you operate in the love of God, right? But I want you to understand the difference between being kind and being nice, because when you're being nice, you're operating from a false pretense, which means you're being nice because you want to avoid conflict. which means you lack ability to stand in what you believe, stand in the truth. And so being kind means you being able to know the truth, be able to stand in your truth, but you do it with kindness. You do it with the ability to be compassionate, right? You're not doing it to be combative. You're not doing it to prove that you know more than the next person. You're not doing it. And it's funny because Paul warns us about that. As I was studying, I was thinking about something to and I'm going to pull this up. I was thinking about some stuff because I have been reading, a couple of scriptures as I was thinking about this whole subject. And I was just like, wow. But I was thinking about this, and it just really just kind of just like grit me, because I was like, it being kind and being nice there's the very thin line. But the difference is you have to be aware. You have to be aware of the fact that that though you might look, you have those foundational boundaries set in place, right? Where you're able to say, okay, you know what? I got this boundary here in place. I'm going to be able to give people the opportunity to show up, right? But when they show up, depending on my discernment and ability to be able to discern who they are, determines what type of boundaries I set up, right? So if you know that you might be around, you might be dating somebody, and that person might be, and especially nowadays, people are really huge, especially in the dating area. They're really huge on this love bombing thing, right? And people will love bomb you, right, with an undertone of using niceness, because usually love bombing, it happens. It happens from men who portray themselves as nice, right? They're portraying themselves as kind, right? But really, what happens is they're nice, right? And what happens is it's a trickery to feed, right? And look, and they like, just like the men in the Bible about looking for silly women, they're looking for vulnerability, looking for different areas of vulnerability in your life to see how they can take advantage of you. And so that's why you have to make sure that you are operating and you're putting up those boundaries, right? While you're developing, especially nowadays, because the times are just so different nowadays, and people are different. People's heart, even the Bible saying in the last days, men's hearts are going to wax cold, right? So you're going to get sometimes you're going to have extreme both ways. You're going to have some people who are, like I said, no nonsense, which really results from women that have been nice for a period of time and they felt like they've been taken advantage of. So they turn to the no nonsense girl, which means everybody they come in contact with, they're mean, they're yelling, they're, authoritative, they're coming across aggressive in an attempt, because in those situations, they have put up a guard. It's like being in the neighborhood, right? You ever been in a neighborhood where everybody has a nice privacy fence and it's neat, and you got that one person, and they don't have, everybody's house is on their boundaries, or their picket fence, their privacy fences are nice and neat, and then you got that one person, they got a guard dog, and they've done all of that because they went through the extreme because of the fact that they've been taken advantage of. So now they done hired a guard at the door. They got security going in a circle around their house. A bit extreme, right? When you think about that, you're like, okay, that's a bit much, right? But what happens is you have to be able to look at the situation, and you have to ask God to give you the ability to discern so that you can be able to stand firm, right, in what you know is true. And when you operate in this silly girl, I was thinking about the church of Laodicea. And I was just like, wow, it's crazy, because when you think about the church of Laodicea, they were lukewarm. And when I think of a silly girl syndrome, I think of a woman that's lukewarm. Don't really have no barrier either way. You just swaying. You just easy to be swayed. Somebody tell you beautiful and you just fall out, right? Somebody tell you amazing, you just, and you just get easily swayed any direction because you're thinking, oh, he told me I was beautiful. He told me I was nice, right? And then what happens is you get taken advantage of. And then then what happens is when things don't work the way you want to, then you wind up severely brokenhearted, right? And then you wind up like that example of that woman or whoever that has their house, and they got a security guard around their house in the neighborhood where there's no crime, because of what happened in your prior relationships, whether it's friendships or whether it's relationships. So I encourage you, and I'm not going to be on here very long, but I encourage you that as you begin to build your relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or whether they're friendships or whether they're business relationships, that you be aware and that you allow God to give you and sharpen your discernment, right? So that you can be able to know what type of boundary to put up. Because I believe boundaries not only protect people from coming in, but it also protects you too, right? It also protects you too. So if you're out here and you're building different kinds of relationships in any of the areas that I've told you about, you have to get clear about who you are and what you stand for, right? And if you don't get clear on who you are and what you stand for, right, then what happens is people can come in and sway you either way. And I believe being a woman of wisdom is being able to have discernment, right? Being able to have influence, right? Being able to be gentle, being able to have strength, being able to be the salt of the earth, being bold, but yet graceful, right? Being able to speak and walk in what you know to be true and yet be kind enough to exhibit gentleness, right? But to me, being nice is just doing things. It's kind of like when you really think about it and when you look at it the way it is, being nice, it's kind of a little kind of makes it feel a little wicked because you're doing something or taking on a behavior for the sake of getting something in return. When being kind is simply the fruit of the spirit, which means you are that way, whether you get what you need from that person or not. You are remaining who you are, whether you get what you receive from them or not. You just come to the understanding that there is no purpose for this, whether it's relationships or friendship, there's no purpose. So you don't take it personal. But what happens is when you operate under that nice girl syndrome, you begin to operate against who you are and against what you stand for. And 9 times out of 10, men take advantage of women who are in the nice girl syndrome. But when you operate with with a standard about your life, and when you operate and you put up boundaries, right? It's so you don't feel you can walk away from a situation and not be able to internalize, right? And take it as rejection. You'll look at that rejection as a redirection, right? As God redirecting you. But what happens is if you begin to operate from, oh, I just want to be nice. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do that. Then you're not operating in as who you truly are. You're operating under this fake persona, right? With the hopes of not offending or not hurting that person's feelings. And I'm not talking about being arrogant. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about walking around and being bold and arrogant and belligerent towards people, right? In under the auspices of speaking truth, but being able to tell the truth in love and being able to stand your ground and be able to say this doesn't align with who I am. This doesn't align for what I stand for, what I believe. And therefore, because this doesn't align with who I am, then I'm going to take a stand, right? Instead of being the silly girl, right? And just going with the flow and just being always agreeable. Oh, okay. Yeah. When you're always agreeable, that means you are denying what you really feel, right? And you're being agreeable. And people like that, it becomes hard to really trust that what they say and believe is really true because if you don't and let me tell you something. This is one thing I learned. I have a lot of respect for people that may tell their truth and operate in boldness, right? More so than somebody who hides how they really feel under the auspices of being nice, right? Because what happens is when people are being nice, they're really just kind of just hiding how they really feel. They're just being agreeable. But when you are bold, you understand where they stand for. There's nothing hidden, nothing covered, right? And so I encourage you women, young women, older women, to take time and really set up those boundaries. Determine what type of boundaries you need in your life so that you can be able to say, okay, you know what? I need a picket fence here in this area, or I need a privacy fence, or do I need a fence that requires an access code, right? And they're going to be different fences. Different neighborhoods require different types of security. So when you're guarding, it's a sense of security, right? You have to decide wherever you are and wherever you're because your heart, right, is like your garden, right? It's your heart, right? You have to decide what type of boundary I'm going to put around my heart, and based on the type of people that you're around. And it doesn't mean put up a guard so high that you just don't trust anybody and you just treat people like with a long handed spoon. No, God wants us to, he wants us to fellowship. He wants us to mingle. He wants us to get to know people. Don't allow it to cause you to be fearful to interact with people. You just have to be able to know, like when you go in certain neighborhoods, like I said, they have certain type of security because they value their place of living, their place where they rest. And you have some neighborhoods, there's no boundaries, there's no gates, there's no security, and you just come and go when you leave. You just come and just walk out the people's door and just bum 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 bum. And then there's some places you got to get that access code, or you're not getting in unless somebody lets you in. And you have to be that way around your heart. The Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. And your inability to put up those boundaries will cause you to be in that position of a silly woman, where you will be looked at, right, based on the world standard. You'll be looked at as somebody who is vulnerable, right, who is gullible, and who lacks discernment, right? And so we want to be women that have discernment. We want to be women that are able to stand for what we believe. We want to be women that let our yeses be yeses and our noes be noes. We want to be women that when we hold a standard for ourselves in our life, that we actually do it, right? We want to be women of God that when we feel like that somebody is violating, right, our boundaries, that you have the ability and the stamina to be able to put a stop to it, right? Because what happens when people overstep your boundaries? What you do, you get security guard, you get somebody in to deal with that. And so my desire is that we become women, right, that put up the boundaries necessary and be able to discern, right, to be able to discern who's approaching. And if there needs to be a picket fence, or if there needs to be a privacy fence, or if it needs to be a security guard there, right, to have access. And that all depends on your level of value. If you know that you are a woman of value, of caliber, of essence, a woman, what I would consider of Proverbs, then people ought not to just have access to you just like that. You ought not to give access to everybody. Ought not to give access to everybody. Everybody should have access to you, right? If you are a woman of value, a woman of stamina, right? When you think about what we consider when we call ourselves queens, right? When you think about an actual queen, not everybody has access to the queen. You could get your life taken from you if you try to approach the queen, right? And so we've got to have that kind of visual when it comes to our sense of value and our worth, is that you got to stop giving everybody access to you, right, without fully vetting them and being able to have discernment to see where they are, right? See if they have the ability to reciprocate and to be there to hold you up, right? to add to your life in any way, shape, or form. And there are some areas of your life where you're going to contribute to people from a charitable aspect, which means you're not going to expect anything from them in return. You're just going to be there to pour into them. You're going to be just there to deposit what God has given you them through giving you to for them, where you're not expecting anything in return. And you're going to be there to just be there to pour into them, to encourage them, right? And then you're going to have people that may be closer to you, right? That is going to be a part of your inner circle, right? And they're going to have access to vulnerable areas of your life. You have to make sure that the people that you have in your inner circle, that there is a genuine care and concern, that God, you have to pray that God shows you the heart of the people that you're around, so that you can be able to discern, right, that the people around you that are there that can lift your arms up and can be your community, right? And then you have to make sure that the people that you meet that you may never have a real connection with, you just might be people that you meet in different places, and you might be somebody, you might have to have a different set of boundary for them, right? Which means that you may interact and you may mingle with them, right? But they may not be people that may have access to your inner circle, right? But these are people that you may genuinely care about, and that you genuinely operate with a kind heart towards, right? And you're being kind towards them because your kindness is a fruit of the spirit, right? And you can't operate in the spirit of God without without operating the fruit of the spirit, right? And the fruit of the spirit is love, kindness, peace, right? Gentleness, right? You can't operate in his spirit if you don't have those character traits. But being a nice girl is not a character. Now, it's not a character of the fruits of the spirit, right? Being a nice girl, or nice girl syndrome, right, comes from your inability to be able to stand up and be who you genuinely are. So you hide behind a form of kindness. I'm going to say that again. Nice girl syndrome means you are hiding behind a form of kindness. And remember, I just read the scripture. It says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Which means when you think about a nice girl syndrome, when you have a form of niceness, a form of kindness, it means that you're not able to stand and be who you genuinely are. You can't be who you genuinely are. So you operate in a form of kindness, right? Denying the power thereof, which means you not having the ability to be if you're not be able to be who you genuinely are, right? Then what happens, you're lacking the power, because believe it or not, God has made us all individually and uniquely different. We are made in his image and in his likeness. So we are all carrying different character traits of who God is, right? But operating in a form of godliness means to show up in a mask, right? Masking. When you're operating in the nice girl syndrome, you're operating in a mask from being who you are, because there's an underlying there's an underlying trauma, or there's an underlying sense of low self-esteem that's there, right? Because you think, and don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that, you can't walk around, you can't smile, and you can't be, and you can't be kind, because being nice is a part of being kind. But being nice, or having the nice girl syndrome, means you are overlooking things that are clearly evident, and you lack discernment to see things as they really are. So that's basically what I wanted to come on and talk to you about. It was just something that was on my heart, something that I had just been thinking about, and just thinking about even in my own situation, and thinking about how areas of my life where I've operated in this nice girl syndrome. And because we think, because me, I'm genuinely a happy person, and I'm genuinely a happy person because of who God is and what he's done in my life. So my smile and my countenance is not solely based on anything other than what God has done in my life and how he continues to show up and how he continues to be there for me. So I cannot help but to be kind, right? That is a part of the fruit of the spirit, is a part of my personality trait for me to be kind. But I've had to examine my own life and make sure that my kindness doesn't appear under the auspices or under the form of the nice girl syndrome, right? Because sometimes people can see that you're kind and they will look for areas. And you know, the crazy part is, even having the nice girl syndrome, because I used to have the nice girl syndrome. I will admit, I was one that have the nice girl syndrome where I didn't want to feel like I was disappointing anybody. I didn't want to feel like I was hurting anybody's feelings. I didn't want to be looked at a certain way. And then God had to really come in and really heal me and to really show me who I was in him. And as he began to show me who I was in the midst of him, I began to take off and he began to free me from the nice girl syndrome. And so yet I am still very kind, right? I am compassionate, right? I can still be vulnerable, right? But now I understand the difference. I understood my inability to discern things that were right there before me, right? Now I have the ability. God has been really ministering to me and really showing me what it's like to be a woman of wisdom, which is why there's so much emphasis on becoming a woman of Proverbs, because I believe there's a process that you have to go through. I believe there's a process in your life where God will allow you to take you from one place to another to teach you, right? So that you can be a better representation of him, right? Because we can't represent somebody if we don't operate in their nature, in their image, in their likeness, right? When you wear, the Bible tells us to put on the Lord Jesus, right? When you think about something that you put on, right? When you wear your Gucci gear and your Prada and all that other stuff, you are putting on an image, right? Because you want to be perceived a certain way when you wear a certain type of clothing line. You want to be perceived a certain way when you are seen wearing a certain shoe. You want to be perceived a certain way when you wear or carry a certain purse, right? It is perceived that you are a person of excellence or a person that is financially secure, or you might be perceived as a person that has money, right? But what if we put on the Lord Jesus Christ? What if we put on the fruits of the spirit? What if we were to operate in his image and in his likeness? What if we were to show up and to be kind instead of nice? What if we were to show up and to be gentle, right? And not to the extreme and come up with the no nonsense mindset, which is rooted in, you know, hurt and trauma, right? But when you can show up and you can be gentle and you can be seen as a woman of strength, not because you're boisterous and because you're angry, but because you have a soundness on the inside of you. You have a peace, right? That surpasseth all understanding. When God has affirmed who you are, right? And when you think about somebody that has been affirmed, there is a level of contentment that comes where you don't feel like you have to put on the nice girl syndrome to be like, where you don't have to put on the nice girl syndrome to be able to declare. You can show up, right? And a lot of that nice girl syndrome is rooted in rejection. It's rooted in trauma, right? When you've been traumatized, right? And when you've been rejected, you begin to show up, right? In the mask of being nice because you don't want to face or feel the pain that you felt when you were in that situation. But when God begins to truly heal you and truly show you, not for the purposes of being arrogant towards people, not for the purposes of thinking that you are better than anybody, but so that you can be healed and that you can stand and be the woman that God has called you to be, so that you can operate from the level that He wants you to operate, right? Because the Bible says to be carnally minded is death. To be spiritually minded is life and peace. What does that mean? That means when you're carnally minded, you're always thinking about and caring about the cares of the world. Your whole conversation, your life is consumed with the world, with the things concerning the world. But when you are spiritually minded, there is not only life, but there's peace, which means you're only concerned is what God wants to do in me and through me. When your concern begins to be, God, what do you want to do in me and what do you want to do through me? You begin to live a life of peace, right? Of life and peace. Your countenance changes. Your everything around you. You begin to, when things are chaotic, you begin to be a woman of peace, because no matter what is going on around you, when you begin to operate from a life and peace, you begin to see things from a different perspective. When you begin to stand, when you begin to agree with God when it comes to how He sees things, you begin to have a sense of peace, because I'm in agreement with God, whatever God wants for my life. I'm in agreement. And I am learning that in order for me to get an agreement with what God has for my life, I have to stand in the things that He wants me to stand in. I have to be bold in the areas that He wants me to be bold in. I have to see myself the way He sees me. And when I begin to see myself the way He sees me, it changes the dynamic of who I am and how I show up, because I am forever becoming. And the more I become what? Like Him. When I become more like Him, when He shows up, when He sees me and I have to appear before Him, right? He wants to be able to see His image reflected in me. So it's my responsibility while I'm on this earth realm to take all the things that I go through and look at it and see how it's going to all work together for my good. Every heartbreak is working for my good. Every disappointment is working for my good. Every bad decision is working for my good. And you know why? It's working for my good because it's allowing me to see the error of my ways and to begin to see how to do things differently, and to be able to see how I can do things differently in the future. To see how can God get the glory out of this mess? How can God get the glory out of this situation? Because He said He causes all things to work together to the good of them who, not just to the good of anybody, but to them that love God and to them that are called according to His purpose. That means everything that I go through, everything that I experience, every pain that I've ever had to feel, every heartbreak is working for a particular purpose in my life. And that's how I look at all the things that happen. Now I look at it as it's happening for me. The disappointments and the things that I go through, it's happening for me. It's not happening to me. It's happening for me, because if it's going to get me to that place to where God wants me to be, I have to learn how to embrace my shortcomings. I have to learn how to embrace my errors and my faults and my wrongdoings. I have to embrace it and be able to know that even in the midst of this, that God's going to take all of this and He's going to cause this to work in His favor. I don't know how He's going to do it. I don't know how He's going to work it out, but He's going to make it work together where it's going to work out for my good. And working out for my good does not mean that I get the answers to all the whys I have, But what it will do is it will give me understanding in all things. And understanding is not answers, it means just that. It is a condition of the heart. Understanding is a bypass. It's almost like something, it's almost like a settling in your heart. It's almost like, you know how when you think about some stuff and somebody says it's already taken care of, and they say, oh, don't worry, you might have a concern about something, and they say it's already taken care of, and you have the burden, that you have the desire to be like, what happened, well, how did it get taken care of? And God, and then all of a sudden that person just like, it's just taken care of, don't worry about it, right? And that's what it's like when he gives us understanding in all things. He gives us a peace that surpasses all understanding. Why is it surpassing all understanding? Because, right, it'll keep our heart and mind, right? Because even if he told us why he allowed things to happen in our life, even if he told you, you still will have another question at the end of that. So God knows, and so he gives us comfort by telling us that he causes all things to work together for our good. But not just, like I said, just anybody, but to them that love God and to them that are called according to his purpose. So everything that you go through in your life, every setback, every disappointment, every day that you've operated as a silly woman, right? It's going to work together for your good, because it's going to get you in some places. It's going to push you in some places where you're going to see yourself and you're not going to like what you see. But you're going to be able to see how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your decision, and how it's you showing up. And you're not going to like what you see. But when God comes in and he begins to heal you from the inside out, truly, then what happens is you will begin to see everything that you've had to encounter, everything that you had to deal with. You will all begin to see it work together for your good. So I say again, don't be a silly woman. Don't be a silly woman. Be a woman, be a woman of wisdom. Be a woman that has discernment. Be a woman that exercises strength and gentleness. Be a woman that's of salt and light. Be a woman that's of with boldness and grace. Be a woman of influence with vulnerability. Don't be a silly woman. Because being a silly woman puts you in circumstances and in things to where you, at the end, you're the one that's looking like you got the egg on your face. You're the one that's dealing with all the emotions, and everybody else is going on about their life and being who they are and operating in the genuineness of who they are. And you are hiding under a falsehood of being kind. And nobody likes to be around ingenuine people. Nobody likes to be around people who wear masks. Nobody likes to be around people who can't genuinely be authentic in who they are. Because who are you getting to know? Am I getting to know you, or am I getting to know this image of a person that isn't even who you are? But when you show up as the real person you are, then the people around you get to embrace the genuine aspects of who you are. Then the people around you can show a level of appreciation of what you're really like. And therefore, when you smile, they can see that you have a joy that's unspeakable and full of glory. That there's a story behind the things that you've gone through and the things that you survived, and that you are smiling because God is giving you another opportunity to be able to show forth his glory. That God is giving you another opportunity to be free and be who you are. So I hope that blesses you today. I hope that encourages you. I'm going to play this quick. I'm going to play a couple of videos real quick, and I'm going to come back with some final words. Thank you so much. And for those of you that are watching and you're watching on the replay, just put hashtag replay. Let me know you're watching it on a replay. If you are watching it live, let me know if this word blessed you and encouraged you. I'd love to be able to hear your feedback, and I'll be right back after this.
Help me to trust him again with my heart and not be scared, looking over my shoulder when it comes to his actions because I felt betrayed by him. Help me to trust his good intentions towards me.
All right. Thank you. I am back here. Hope you can hear me on Sisterhood Check-In. Let me just check and make sure my sound is okay. Hold on one second. Thank you. I'm over here watching myself on another platform, just making sure everything is working good. So I just wanted to make sure that my sound is good. Okay, looks like the sound is good. So welcome back here to Sisterhood Check-In. Before we leave, there's a couple of announcements that I wanted to make and be able to say before I actually end the broadcast today. Is that I want to be able to share that I have I've said it before, is that the Wisdom Clinic. I lost access to the Woman of Proverbs Wisdom Clinic, where I had close to 400 people in that group, and it's a group specifically geared towards being able to share wisdom with women in every aspect, right, of their life. And so I've been recently given access back to the Wisdom Clinic. Praise God. Thank you, Lord. So if you are interested in joining, if you are not already a part of the Wisdom Clinic, right, I want you to click the link at the bottom, and it's totally free. Just click on the link and join the Wisdom Clinic. I am excited about all the things that I'm going to be doing back in that clinic. There's so many things that I used to do when I did have access. And it's funny because I've missed you guys. I haven't seen you guys. I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys, where we do a little more talking and in depth about girl talk stuff. So I'm really looking forward to being able to going live in there. And I have a plan. I have some things lining up where I'm going to go back actively a part in the Wisdom Clinic. So again, if you are not a part of the Wisdom Clinic and you want to be a part of the Wisdom Clinic, just make sure you click the link at the bottom. Also, I wanted to, for those of you that have not been a part, I have a group called the P31 Digital Academy. So in the Digital Academy, I basically give you do different master classes on all things concerning digital products. So I basically teach you how to do different things, from creating an app for your business to how to create content that pops, to starting your own virtual call center. There's so many different classes that I am teaching in the P31 Digital Academy, teaching you how to be able to do different things so that you can enhance your business or provide business services to other people to help them, right? Because whether we believe it or not, we're in the digital industry. And so traditional, unless you're in the medical, security, or different types of field, the job industry as we know it is not going to be the same. right? And so you want to be able to, the purpose of this digital academy is to teach you skill sets that you can either apply to your business right now, or you can learn to provide it to other people. So if you're like, just go to the p31digitalacademy.com and sign up, where I will be hosting classes every Saturday. At 7 p.m. to give you a skill set that you can put under your belt, right? And these are skill sets that I've learned, that has helped me in the areas of my business when it comes to me even doing what you see now. The production and everything that I do regarding Sisterhood Check-In is a result of skill sets that I've acquired. So if you are looking to maybe start your own podcast and you want to know, you don't just want to just start a podcast, but or maybe you have a podcast and you don't know how to put the podcast together in terms of being able to have sponsorships and being able to do different things, I go into showing you in the digital academy of how to do those things. So if you haven't, make sure you go to www.p31digitalacademy, or you can actually go to www.coachingwithnadira.com. There's so many things on that website. I have everything from the digital academy to the wisdom clinic. There's so many things on there that you can actually be a part of, and it will definitely be a blessing to you. So make sure you check that out. And also, I also have my, the holidays are coming up. For those of you that want to start your own e-commerce store, make sure you join the digitalacademy.com. Make sure you join the digital academy, because in the digital academy, I'm going to be teaching you how to do different things to be able to generate income, right, for your household, how to generate extra income. I'm going to be teaching you these skill sets for those of you that desire to learn. There's so many different things that we're going to be doing in that. Also, I also have an e-commerce store. It's called Strength and Dignity Boutique. So when you go to the Becoming a Woman of Proverbs, I keep saying Becoming a Woman of Proverbs because I've done that. I've had a site previously called Becoming a Woman of Proverbs. But the site is it's a clothing line for Christian women that want to not only just declare, but be able to just not only just say it, but but be able to wear, what they believe. And so if you go to coachingwithnadira.com, you can click on the Strength and Dignity Boutique, and you'll begin to see all the things that I have available. If you want to be able to support what I do, I'm starting a movement, and it's called It's All God, right? And in the It's All God movement this is where we are not only just becoming and operating at full speed, right, of who we're supposed to be, right? We're not letting things hold us back. We're not, allowing things. We are taking the doors that God has opened for us, and we are walking in boldly, right? And the doors that are opening in impossible situations, we know that if it's open, it is because it is all God. And so join the movement, support the clothing line. I have everything on there from fanny packs to sweaters for the winter. But in either case, support. And like I said, again, you can go to coachingwithnadira.com. You can see all the things. I also have a health and wellness section there also, where it shows you different things that I use that contribute to how I feel, that things that I do to take care of myself so that I can show up. Most people think, oh, you do this and you do this and you look like this because you do all of this. But actually, a lot of the things that I do in the wellness, I account to not only just how I take care of myself emotionally and spiritually, but what I put in my body, right? And I think it's important, if we're going to get through these, especially through the winter months and everything that they're talking about, displaying in the next year or so, you have to be able to be intentional with taking care of your body. So I have some things that I take for myself that I want you guys to be able to look at. And if you're interested, You can purchase it directly there from the site. And so, yeah, so that's basically it. If you need to get in contact with me, if you need one-on-one coaching, and you need help in being able to deal with areas of your life in terms of identity, self-care, right? And learning how to take dominion over certain mindsets, right? I'm your girl. I can show you. God has delivered me through a lot of different mindsets, and there's some things that I've learned. And there's some things that in what I've learned has helped me become, and is still helping me become, the woman that I am today. So if you are interested and you want to have one-on-one coaching services, reach out to me also on the coachingwithnadira.com and set up for a free 30-minute consultation, and I'll let you know if I can help you, because I'm not going to say I can help everybody, but there are some areas that God has given me the ability to help based on what he's done for me, that I do have the ability to help people. And it's something I've been doing all my life. It's crazy because it's not something I just picked up and did. It's something that I've learned over the years, and it's been a part of my growth. And I want to be able to, if you struggle in those same areas, then reach out to me and I'll be glad to help you. Other than that, if there's nothing else, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone that support. I appreciate everyone that actually watches, whether on a replay or whether you watch, whether you're watching live. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I want you to know that just like hurt people, also know this, right? That healed people can aid in healing people also. Just like hurt people, heal people can heal people too. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing week.
Help me to trust him again with my heart and not be scared, looking over my shoulder when it comes to his actions because I felt betrayed by him. Help me to trust his good intentions towards me